Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Create Your Best Chapter with Confidence. And in my podcast, I'm having these really amazing conversations with women who share their wisdom around major life changes that are happening to us. And today, I have a really awesome friend of mine. Her name is Lori Bean. Lori is the founder of Malia Wellness Center for women, children and women, teens, and girls, right? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about her journey into starting this wellness center. And we're also going to talk about a really special collaboration that we're doing together that I'm really, really excited about. So, Lori, welcome to my podcast. I'm happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Now, I first got to know you about a year and a half ago through a mutual friend of ours. And as soon as I saw your website, I just felt like this was such an amazing, supportive, welcoming space. Like I could just feel the energy exuding through the website, which I know some people might think sounds crazy, but I really believe that we get the energy, we can feel energy through the internet. And then as soon as I saw your actual physical space, of course, I was just so blown away by the space that you've created for women. Can you tell us a little bit about what started your vision of creating this wellness center for women, teens, and young girls?
Sure. So I would say I used to run an interior design company for probably close to 20 years. And my journey was, I was always very ambitious and driven and, whatever it was, it didn't matter at that time. It was architecture and design. And I was kind of type A, chugging along, doing my thing. And then when I've been doing that for probably, 10 years. And then I got in a really bad car accident. And when I was in my car accident, I had a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I was married, and my whole life really changed from that moment forward, where never mind the physical ailments, but there was a lot of emotional ailments that accompanied that incident. And then dealing with, your relationship and your children and your job and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of struggled sort of the next 10 years with sort of keeping this career that I had, but becoming more and more out of alignment with it because I wasn't well, essentially, and sort of was looking into nurturing myself in a different way. And that kind of shifted my passion for design and architecture to sort of the world of wellness. That was sort of what kind of started that, because I was searching for myself to find support, find a place where I was actually heard with what I was experiencing and not constantly, I guess, not seen and not heard and triggered and not taken seriously. And the continuation of sort of this rejection from Western medicine really led me down this path of finding people that really care, more holistic care, people that saw me and heard me and listened to what I was experiencing. And that was a long journey, a long path of exploring different things. And after many years of that, and finally finding support through alternative modalities, some Western modalities, but mostly alternative modalities, and just really learning that it is ultimately about care, I really felt that I needed to bring this to women who were struggling, who weren't getting their needs met. They weren't supported. They weren't being heard. They were unwell. They were struggling. They couldn't support their children. They couldn't support their spouses. And care just needed to be provided differently than it was being provided. So it kind of it shifted from design and architecture to supporting women. And how could I just create a different paradigm of care, like find people that genuinely care and want to help you with your health, your wellness, even on a spiritual level, mental, physical, all of it. And I don't know, probably took me about 7 years to get to the place of finally opening Malia, going through COVID and all that kind of stuff. And just caring deeply. I think that is the ultimate root of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of answer that.
Yeah, No, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that story. And it's just really interesting to me how you said that you had a physical, something physical happened to you in the car accident, but how you related it to emotional. What do you think we're missing in our society today where we're kind of focusing just on physical or just on emotional? But clearly there's a connection. Like when you figured out the emotional piece, did your physical symptoms disappear as well or get better?
I think it's 100 million% connected. I think so many of us have it backwards. I don't know, I think about, it's sort of interesting. I think about my dad, for example, who had a lot of childhood trauma, saw psychologists for 45 years. And finally, through me working in this environment, sort of convinced him or supported him through getting some body work done, some nervous system regulation, some somatic work, 45 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I have said nothing's wrong with psychology. I think they're all beautiful modalities, I think, but psychology is so focused on the mind that it's forgetting all the trauma that's being held in the body. And once he started to work with the body and exploring these different avenues of releasing the trauma that's being held in his cells, finally, I mean, he's now 81, 2. He's finally, for the first time in his life, experienced relief. It's so connected. I think
Wow.
you can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, but if trauma is held in your body, it's not going to change anything. Or the other way around too. I think if you have so much physical pain, but you're not processing it mentally and emotionally, that's never going to change either. I think that's what holistic care really needs to be about, addressing the mind, body, and the soul. And the
Mm-hmm.
soul being like, who are we? Why are we here? What is our purpose? Are we really living in alignment with our truth? That's another huge piece to health and wellness. Are we in crappy relationship that we just don't want to leave? Are we in a shitty job? Are we struggling financially? And are we just living in these paradigms of dis-ease within our bodies, our minds, and our souls? And that's just perpetuating this unwellness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of it needs to be addressed. All of it needs to be supported. And I think it all starts with true, genuine care.
Right. And the other thing too that you mentioned in your story is someone actually listening.
Yeah.
Because so many women get gaslighted, right? Or they're told you're crazy, or this is just normal. Like you're supposed to feel this way. Like don't complain, or oh, your body's wrong, or your intuition's wrong. And we just get like all of these messages that aren't true. And then, like you said, the second someone listened to you, you're like, oh my gosh, right? Now it opened up, right?
On a daily basis, and I promise you I'm not exaggerating, we have women come in here as young as like really early 30s to late 70s who are newly struggling with hormones, or who have been struggling with hormones for like, I don't know, 50 years, gaslit constantly, not listened to, not their unwellness is not being addressed. They know it's hormonal. We know. I mean, like we as women, we just know, and they're not being heard. They're not being listened to. They're not being supported. The testing isn't being done properly. They're being gaslit. I mean, this is something we see like on a daily, like, what is that? Why isn't that changing? I mean, why isn't there an option for different types of care? I mean, we're bringing in a nurse practitioner to deal especially with bioidentical hormones and to provide these women with a totally different paradigm of testing. And it's very different than what you would normally get tested for when you go to your physician, because she's not looking at like, you're in this range, so you're fine. But what if you're like really low over here or really high over here? How is that still fine? You're not living optimally. You're stressed, you're depressed, you have pain, you have bloating and weight gain, and that's not optimal living. Why aren't we supported in optimal living? Live optimally. Sorry, I could just, it's a whole other thing, but this is what I mean by care. Like somebody listening to you, like what is going on? We're not listened to.
Well, and I think you also bring up this really important conversation that I hear a lot too in my coaching business is people say, I'm fine, right? Women looking at me, it's fine. The job is fine, right? My health is fine. Okay, but it's not fine. Like you might be, like you were saying, like in the normal quote unquote range, but if you're not actually feeling happy, if you actually think something's wrong with you, if you're feeling out of alignment, but yet we're told the message like, well, it's normal, you're fine. And so we just start believing that. And we almost start like disconnecting from our own intuition, from our own bodies, and just saying, well, it's just normal to feel bloated. Well, it's just no one is super happy. And like, it's all these bullshit stories that we keep hearing, and we're perpetuating it ourselves. So I love the fact that what you do and what I do and what other women are doing is like, let's call it what it is. It's not fine.
No,
If
I didn't
you're
know.
not-
I didn't know. This is what's so messed up. I didn't know that you could actually feel really, really well. You could not have IBS. You could not have joint. You could not feel ill all the time. I didn't know that was possible because I was fine. Really, I was fine. I was functioning. And I just had this and that and this and that, a bit of depression, a bit of anxiety, and that's just like exactly what you said. How is that normal? We are not meant to live that way. We are meant to live optimally healthy.
Right.
And healthy meaning feeling well, feeling good, feeling joy, feeling happiness, excitement, feeling none of this. Like that should be our norm.
Yeah.
And it is possible.
And it is possible. And also thinking about it in all areas, right? So there's like we were talking about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, the financial, the career, right?
Yeah.
Like all of those things. And so having this conversation and almost saying like, no, I deserve to live a life that is optimal, that feels good. And I firmly believe that when we bring women to that point, like when we operate with energy, in alignment, right? With passion, with purpose, feeling good, feeling better than fun, like feeling amazing in all areas of our life, like guess what that's going to do? Like we need women to feel that way because we're going to change the world. And the only way that we can do that is by feeling really good and being well and being cared for and caring for ourselves and caring for others, right?
But I also understand that is not the norm. The norm is people feeling like that is not possible.
Right.
And I don't know any different. I've experienced this for 20 years or 30 years. And this is just it's not excuses. That's not the word. It's a conditioning. It's a conditioning. It's really mind blowing to see that we feel that our lives are okay if it's just kind of like this. I don't know. And I don't know if it's a deserving thing. I don't know if that's it.
It could be a knowledge thing. Like I think you're right. We think, well, this is just normal. We've been brought up to think, well, you're just supposed to, at a certain age, have aches and pains and it doesn't matter. And there's nothing you can do about it. And it's all this kind of stuff. Right. And so I think part of it is just knowledge, like what you experienced. As soon as you found someone that listened to you and opened up the door to some alternative modalities that you hadn't even ever heard of, then you're like, oh, wow, like there's other answers here. So I think some of it's knowledge, awareness. Some of it could be the deserving issue. Some of it could be making time for yourself, right? Some of it is regulating your nervous system so you can actually make better decisions or think about other options for yourself. Some of it is finding out resources like what you have. Like I know that when women walk into your center, like I've heard women say this to me when they walk into Malia, it's like, wow, I never knew this existed. I love this approach of integrated approach. And I actually feel listened to here. And I feel like now I have hope. Like I feel like I can now finally take control because I have support around me.
It's all support and care. And I find, another thing that's really interesting is the younger the people are that we're seeing here, like this, which I find both really, really sad and actually really beautiful. Like women in their late 20s and early 30s coming in going, I don't feel good. Something is wrong. I'm not well. I don't know what's wrong. I'm depressed. I can't get out of bed. I'm not happy in my life. I would have never done that in my late 20s, ever. Well, I had this accident where I was really, really, really unwell. So I needed to seek care, but I wouldn't have done that just because I wasn't feeling good. Like, I think it's amazing to see that this new generation is advocating for themselves, but it's also really sad that we're not feeling good. Like,
Hmm.
it's just weird,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know. It's just really interesting to me. But yeah, and I think just to have something available that's really supportive and different and collaborative, and having women here, it's all women supporting women who really, really care. And we also see a ton of kids now.
Hmm.
So it's really about supporting initially the moms, but then we learn, the children are an extension of the family. So we have a lot of child therapists here and that kind of thing. And it's kind of beautiful, people are getting their needs met finally, which is
Yeah.
kind of my mission.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you see as the biggest challenge or struggle for women?
I think we are so hard on ourselves. I know we hear this over and over and over and over and over again. I'm probably the worst candidate of that. I think our self-talk is so bad.
Mm,
I read so many books myself and recognize every time that I create my own demise half the time. I think that's really normal. I don't know why we perpetuate that. I find it really interesting. So I think we're really hard on ourselves. I think, we're living in a world where, especially when we have children, that both adults need to be working to be able to support. So there's so much busyness, and there just isn't time for things, and we're overrun and exhausted, and we don't know how to there's no coping tools. I mean, there's so many different things. Our medical system, what, you can now see your doctor for 10 minutes and then you have to make another appointment for your second question. I
mhm,
can go on and on and on. And and
mhm,
because we are so busy, we're not in community, we're super isolated, we think we're the only ones having this experience. I hear that endlessly.
mhm,
We're
mhm,
embarrassed that we don't feel well, so
mhm,
that's another thing, we don't share that. um,
mhm.
which is really sad because I think it's a huge majority of people.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. That's interesting because I hear that a lot too. Like every time I do a workshop or some sort of class or anything that's in a group setting or even one-on-one, women will always say to me, I thought I was the only one going through this, right? And I think that's the importance of sharing our story, right?
yeah,
Like people like you and I need to get up and like tell our story and show that it's not embarrassing. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We need to be vulnerable. We need to be honest because the second you do, people are going, oh, wait, I can relate to that. I'm
yeah,
also going through something similar. And start that conversation going. And you said the word community,
yeah,
right? So, like creating a support network, creating community, because the studies show that we feel in North America, at least, way more disconnected than ever before in history. And yet we have all this beautiful technology that supposedly connects us. And yet most of us feel lonely, alone. Like some crazy percentage of people have say that if there was something that happened in their life, they would have no one to turn to.
yeah,
That is heartbreaking.
yeah, it is heartbreaking.
It's so
You
sad.
know, it's so interesting because it makes me think about when I was going through my divorce. I think this is what it is. I don't think women think that they're the only ones going through it. I think they think the depth of their despair is deeper than anyone else's. Like, if I had to reflect on my experience, no one is in as much pain as I am in, so no one will get it.
Mm,
No one feels as hurt as me, so no one's going to get it. No one feels as bad as I do, or as ashamed as I do, or as guilty as I do. They're not. That's why. And you're embarrassed that there's like this shame and guilt. And how do I share
mhm,
this? There's so much wrapped in our experiences that we don't live is to, as to the reason why we don't reach out. I think it's
yeah.
so deep. And we live in a world where we're supposed to be like happy and perfect and all these things,
Mhm.
but if we're experiencing this huge depth of despair and anguish, and how do you share that with somebody?
Well, and I think the other thing is a lot of times when we're going through something like that and we're feeling that despair or that guilt or that shame, maybe others in our life immediately aren't going through something like that. So we
Yeah,
feel like maybe it's a burden or they won't understand it. That type of thing as well. And when we're in that despair, it's hard to pull ourselves out and look at things rationally and say, okay, I know I'm not the only one, right?
100%. It's so painful.
Hmm.
And I know my go-to, sadly, is to isolate myself.
Hmm.
So when I I mean, my best friend will say this all the time. I know if I haven't heard from you in a week, like something's really wrong.
Right.
And that's my go-to, which is so, I know it's unhealthy. I know
Hmm.
it's better to express and get support and all these things, but I don't know. It's like we all have these habits, and I think
Hmm.
the first step is awareness. I'm getting better at that. I'm getting better at reaching out and asking for help. I think it's all a journey too, right?
Absolutely, it's a journey, and there's no, right or wrong way of being on the journey. There's no timeline to the journey, and sometimes things come up that, lead us onto a different path on the journey, and that's okay. What I'm really passionate about, though, is creating that support network, right?
Yeah.
Creating that community so that people can feel safe to reach out, even if it's one-on-one or even if it's just, once in a while, but where they know that, okay, there's some place that I can go to. So similar to Malia, right? Like they know they can go there. They're going to get an empathetic ear. They're going to feel cared for and listened to. And even if they don't book an appointment, they can at least go in there and have that conversation and know that there's support there for them. So this is a great segue into what you and I are collaborating on, which I'm super honored to be doing. And, I know that there's such a need for this, but creating this community around women who are on their divorce journey.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love that we're doing this. I think we've both been through it. And I think, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of friends that I have that are going through or have been through, or divorce is like, I don't know. There aren't actually words to describe how painful it is, because it not only affects you, it affects your children and your extended family, and it's not a short-term thing. It's kind of forever. It's a
Mm-hmm.
forever navigating this part in life that's happened, and it's fear of the future, and it's regret, and it's shame, and it's guilt, and it's really so painful. And I also know that you and I have come out the other side,
Mm-hmm.
and that is possible. And I don't care how deep in despair you are, it is still possible. And I think that's a message that I really want to share. And we really do need to be there for each other, just to hold space, so that showing that we understand what we don't need to change anything. It doesn't mean that anything's going to be changed, but to know that you're supported, and there are people that care, and there's a place to go, and there are tools to help you get out of it. I remember feeling like I was just, I don't know, trying to claw my way out of this hole was the only way I could describe it. And
Mm-hmm.
just having resources around me to help me navigate it all. And I think without some of the connections that I made at that time, I don't know how well I would have gotten through it, because it was
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
But I wish there would have been a group available where I could sit and just express how I was feeling, to know if like what I was feeling was even normal.
Right.
And it would shift. It would shift from like guilt to fear to shame to despair to, it was the most bizarre time of my life, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that I remember those cascades of emotions, right? And it wasn't even like in one day, it was like in an hour,
Yeah.
right? Or in a couple of minutes, you'd feel all these different emotions. And I was like, what do I do with all these
No.
feelings? Right. Like one minute I'm wanting to throw something at the wall, and the other minute I'm laughing hysterically, right? And so it's just like, you're right, it's having the tools to navigate that,
Yeah.
and seeing people who have gone through it and have gone through the other side gives people hope, and we need that hope, because I agree with you 1,000,000%. Like, it's possible to get through it no matter what. And not only that, and people may not believe this depending on where you are in your journey, but there's a lesson and there's a gift, and
100%.
usually more than one.
100%.
And the gifts show up. Like,
Yeah.
the gifts show up if you just keep going and keep taking little baby steps and keep believing and recommitting every day and reaching out for help. Like, that gift is going to show up. And
Yeah,
I
because
think,
that experience is not an accident.
right.
Like, divorce doesn't just like happen in a minute. Like it's a series of events. Yeah, so there has to be a learning or a gift in it, or a growth from it, or
Hmm.
you
An
know,
evolution. It's an
an
evolution,
evolution,
right?
an evolution. But it is it's hard. And there's so many pieces to the puzzle. I really think it's one
Absolutely.
of the hardest things to navigate in life.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So we're going to be hosting a free women's gathering coming up on July 21st, and I'll have the link in the show notes for anyone who's interested in that. But we are also going to be, holding a 6-week group program in the fall where we're going to, again, hold space, teach and share some tools and resources. And I think most importantly, create a space for women to have meaningful conversations, to share, and not only to receive guidance and wisdom, but also to give guidance and wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of the healing process, is being in community and that giving and that taking, right? We need both of those things to help us heal. So I'm really, really looking forward to that.
Me too. Me too. And yeah, just to be there to support one another and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. I know I will be, because it's still part of your DNA. It's still part of your soul. It's still part of your heart. It's always there. It's way easier now. I mean, for me, it's been like 13 years or whatever, but yeah, like to know that we're there for each other and we are here when it's needed. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So I'll put all the information in the show notes. So Lori, I acknowledge you for your mission of care, integrative, holistic, empathetic care, and really listening to women. I know that I've been, the beneficiary of your wonderful spirit and love. And so I really acknowledge you for that and all the work that you do. I'm so honored to be working alongside with you in the upcoming weeks and months. And we'll need to do this again and have another further conversation.
I feel the exact same way about you. And we even have husbands that kind of look alike, which is a little freaky.
Well, sometimes these things happen, and there's, like you said, there's no accident.
There's no accident.
Meant to be. Well, thank you so much, Lori, and we'll connect again soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.